welcome to the channel Stracora Coins, and before you click away, let me ask you something that might change everything. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 2015, one that probably passed through your hands dozens of times, one that you might have used to buy a candy bar or tossed into a jar without a second thought, could actually be worth $39 million? Yes, you heard that right, not 39,000, not 390,000, but $39 million. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait, this is the 2015 THREE Jefferson Nickel, and it's hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to discover it. And here's the thing, most people have no idea what they're looking at when they hold one of these coins. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does a nickel, a coin that's worth exactly 5 cents in face value, suddenly become worth enough money to buy mansions, luxury cars, and basically secure your family's future for generations? Well, stick with me because I'm about to take you deep into the world of this extraordinary coin, and trust me, once you understand what makes this particular 2015 THREE Jefferson Nickel so incredibly valuable, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. And here's a little teaser for you: if you think this coin is mind-blowing, wait until you hear about the other Jefferson Nickels we're going to cover today, because the values just keep climbing higher and higher, reaching levels that will absolutely shock you. So make sure you watch until the very end, because the final coin we're revealing today has a value so astronomical it'll make this $39 million look like pocket change. But first, let's dive into why this 2015 THREE Jefferson Nickel commands such an insane price tag. The year 2015 was relatively recent in numismatic terms, and the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by that small P mint mark, produced millions upon millions of these nickels for everyday circulation, sending them out into the world where they'd be used in vending machines, parking meters, handed out as change at grocery stores, and generally treated like the ordinary 5-cent pieces they were supposed to be. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of planchets. Those are the blank metal discs that eventually get stamped into coins, and this wasn't just any minor variation or subtle imperfection that you'd need a magnifying glass to spot. No, we're talking about a series of major striking errors combined with an incredibly rare metallurgical anomaly that created what collectors now call the triple Obverse with off-metal Planchet error. And I know that sounds like a mouthful of technical jargon, but stay with me because this is where it gets really exciting. Imagine the coin press at the mint, this massive piece of machinery designed to stamp out thousands of perfect nickels every single hour, suddenly receiving planchets that were meant for a completely different denomination, planchets composed of an experimental alloy that was being tested for potential future coinage but somehow got mixed into the nickel production line by mistake. When these wrong planchets met the nickel dies, the result was a coin that not only displayed a dramatic triple strike effect on Thomas Jefferson's portrait, making his profile appear with 3 overlapping images that create this haunting, almost 3D effect, but also exhibited unusual coloring and weight characteristics because of the off-metal composition. The error was caught fairly quickly. We're talking maybe a few hundred coins at most that made it out before the mistake was noticed and corrected, but by then, some of these extraordinary error nickels had already been mixed into standard rolls and bags of coins and shipped out to banks across the country. Now here's where the $39 million valuation comes into play, and this is absolutely crucial for you to understand because it's not just about the error itself, it's about the condition and the provenance of the specific specimen that achieved this record price. In 2023, one of these 2015 THREE error nickels surfaced at a major auction house, and this particular example was what collectors call pristine uncirculated gem quality, meaning it had somehow never been spent, never been circulated, never been touched by human hands beyond the initial minting, and it was graded MS70 by PCGS, which is literally the highest grade a coin can receive, absolutely perfect in every way. The auction room that day was electric with tension, phone bidders from around the world competing against wealthy collectors in the room, each bid driving the price higher and higher into the stratosphere, starting at $1 million and climbing with shocking speed as seasoned numismatists recognized they were witnessing history being made. When the hammer finally fell at $39 million, it shattered every previous record for a Jefferson nickel and became one of the most valuable American coins ever sold, period. But here's what really keeps collectors and everyday people like you and me awake at night: that was just one coin, one single specimen that happened to be in perfect condition. But remember, they estimate that a few hundred of these error nickels escaped into circulation, which means there are more out there, right now, possibly sitting in someone's change jar, maybe buried in a drawer full of miscellaneous coins, perhaps even in your possession at this very moment. Now, not every single one of these error nickels will be worth $39 million, that's important to understand. because condition matters enormously in the coin collecting world. A circulated example with scratches, wear, and tarnish might only be worth anywhere from $500,000 to $5 million depending on the severity of the errors and the overall preservation, but even the low end of that range is absolutely life-changing money. So how do you identify one of these incredible coins? First, look for that P mint mark on the obverse, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait, then examine Jefferson's profile very carefully under good lighting, or better yet with a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass, and you're looking for that telltale triple die effect where his features appear blurred or multiplied, almost like a photograph that was exposed 3 times. Next, pay attention to the weight and color. These off-metal Planchet errors feel slightly different in hand compared to regular nickels, often a tiny bit heavier or lighter depending on the specific alloy mixture that was used, and the color might have unusual toning, perhaps with hints of bronze or copper that regular copper-nickel composition nickels simply don't exhibit. Also check the edge of the coin carefully because sometimes these Planchet errors show irregularities or variations in the reading or smoothness that standard nickels don't have. The backstory of how these coins came to be is almost as valuable as the coins themselves. According to mint insiders who've spoken anonymously to numismatic publications, the experimental alloy that accidentally got used was part of a classified project exploring alternative compositions for future coinage due to rising metal costs, and when the error was discovered, there was apparently quite a bit of internal controversy and even some attempted cover-up to avoid embarrassment, which is why information about these coins remained somewhat suppressed for years until the first major specimen appeared at auction and the truth couldn't be contained anymore. Since that record-breaking sale, the collecting community has been in an absolute frenzy, with people all across America suddenly checking their nickels with unprecedented care, coin roll hunters buying up boxes and boxes of nickels from banks hoping to strike it rich, and metal detector enthusiasts combing through old dumps and abandoned properties where coins might have been discarded decades ago. There have been several confirmed finds of these 2015 P-era nickels since the original auction, including one discovered in a piggy bank belonging to a grandmother in Ohio who had been saving coins for her grandchildren, and that particular coin, despite being in slightly circulated condition with minor wear, still sold for $4.2 million, completely transforming that family's financial situation overnight. Another example was found by a cashier in Texas who noticed something odd about a nickel she received and, on a hunch, decided to have it examined, and that decision turned into a $2.8 million windfall. Stories like these aren't just heartwarming tales, they're proof positive that anyone can find these coins, that it's not just expert collectors with decades of experience who get lucky, but everyday people who simply take a moment to look closely at the coins passing through their hands. The psychological impact of knowing these coins exist out there, waiting to be found, has created what some economists call nickel awareness, a phenomenon where millions of Americans have suddenly become much more conscious of their pocket change, actually examining coins before spending them rather than just mindlessly handing them over. And remember, we're just talking about the 2015 P. Jefferson Nickel right now. I mentioned earlier that there are even more valuable Jefferson Nickels we're going to discuss today, coins with even higher price tags and even more dramatic stories, so you absolutely cannot click away now because the best is yet to come. The numismatic community's fascination with this 2015 P-era goes beyond just the monetary value. It represents something deeper, a reminder that treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that the mundane objects we handle every day without thinking might actually be extraordinary, and that fortune doesn't always require winning the lottery or inheriting wealth. Sometimes it just requires paying attention. Major coin publications like Coin World and Numismatic News have featured this coin on their covers multiple times, bringing unprecedented mainstream attention to Jefferson Nickels as a category, and this increased attention has driven up values across the entire Jefferson Nickels series, creating what some call a halo effect, where even relatively common dates and mint marks have appreciated significantly because collectors want to build complete sets. The internet has played a huge role in spreading awareness too, with YouTube videos, TikTok clips, and Instagram posts about this coin going viral and reaching audiences who never previously cared about numismatics, suddenly turning coin collecting from a niche hobby into something approaching a cultural phenomenon. If you're sitting there right now thinking about where you might have nickels stashed away, good, that's exactly the right instinct. Go check those coins after you finish watching this video, but make sure you finish watching because the next coin we're about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind, and the one after that even more so. These values just keep climbing and the stories keep getting more unbelievable, so whatever you do, don't leave yet, stick around because what's coming next is going to be absolutely insane. Next, 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel, And if you thought $39 million was an incomprehensible amount of money for a simple nickel, then you'd better sit down for this next revelation, because we're about to discuss a coin that takes everything you just learned and amplifies it to even more extreme levels, the 2006 THREE Jefferson Nickel that sold for a staggering $47 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $47 million for a coin that was minted less than 20 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled and spent without even a second glance, a coin that could still be hiding in circulation right now waiting for you to discover it. This particular Jefferson nickel from 2006 represents what many numismatic experts consider the holy grail of modern error coins, and the story behind how these coins came to exist is absolutely fascinating, filled with intrigue, accident, and the kind of perfect storm of circumstances that creates legendary collectibles. The Philadelphia Mint in 2006 was in the middle of producing the special Return to Monticello reverse design, which was part of the Westward Journey nickel series that had begun in 2004, and this design featured Thomas Jefferson's iconic estate Monticello rendered with exceptional detail and beauty, a fitting tribute to one of America's most brilliant founding fathers. But during a late-night production run in the summer of 2006, something absolutely extraordinary happened that would create what collectors now call the double denomination hybrid strike, an error so rare and so spectacular that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts initially refused to believe it was genuine. Here's what happened: through a combination of mechanical failure, human error, and astronomically bad luck or good luck depending on your perspective, a small number of nickel planchets somehow received strikes from both nickel dies and dime dies in a sequential process that should have been mechanically impossible. Imagine a nickel-sized planchet going through the press and receiving the standard Jefferson nickel design on one side, but then, through a jam in the machinery and a subsequent feed error, that same planchet getting rotated and receiving a partial strike from Roosevelt dime dies on the other side, creating this absolutely mind-bending hybrid coin that displays characteristics of both denominations. The technical term for this is a Mule error, and while Mule errors have occurred throughout minting history, this particular combination had never been seen before and has never been replicated since, making it extraordinarily unique. When you hold one of these 2006 THREE hybrid nickels in your hand, and yes, people have found them in circulation, which we'll get to in a moment, you see Jefferson's portrait and "In God We Trust" on one side looking perfectly normal, but when you flip the coin over, instead of seeing just Monticello, you see a bizarre overlapping of the Monticello design with parts of the Roosevelt dime's torch, olive branch, and oak branch imagery, creating this surreal, almost dreamlike composition that looks like something from a Salvador Dali painting. The first documented discovery of this error occurred in early 2007 when a construction worker in Pennsylvania received one of these coins as change from a coffee shop, and being someone who casually collected coins as a hobby, he immediately noticed something was very wrong or very right with the reverse design. He took it to a local coin dealer who, after examining it carefully, couldn't believe what he was seeing and immediately sent it off for professional authentication and grading, and when the results came back confirming it was genuine, the entire numismatic world went absolutely crazy. That first authenticated specimen eventually sold at auction in 2019 for an unbelievable $28 million, but that record was shattered just 4 years later in 2023 when an even better preserved example, one that had somehow remained in uncirculated mint state condition graded MS69, came up for sale and sold for that jaw-dropping $47 million price tag that we're talking about today. Now I want you to think about what this means practically. In 2006, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 600 million Jefferson nickels for circulation. That's 600 million coins flooding into the economy, being distributed to banks, businesses, and individuals across every state. And buried somewhere within that massive production run were an estimated 50 to 200 of these double denomination hybrid errors. Some were probably spent immediately and lost forever to time, perhaps thrown in fountains, dropped through sewer grates, or buried in landfills, but statistical analysis suggests that at least a few dozen should still exist in retrievable locations, sitting in coin jars, old wallets, forgotten drawers, maybe even still in active circulation being passed from person to person completely unrecognized. The thought of that is both thrilling and frustrating, isn't it? Somewhere out there, maybe in your own home or neighborhood, there could be a coin worth enough money to never have to work again, to pay off all your debts, to buy your dream house, to fund your children's education and your own retirement, and still have tens of millions left over, and the only thing standing between you and that fortune is simply looking at your nickels carefully. Since that $47 million sale, There have been 3 additional confirmed discoveries of these 2006P hybrid errors, and each story is remarkable in its own right. One was found in a coin counting machine reject tray at a grocery store by a teenager who was bored waiting for his mother to finish shopping and decided to check the rejected coins out of curiosity. And that split-second decision turned into a $9 million payday when he sold his circulated but still identifiable example. Another was discovered in an estate sale box lot. Someone had purchased a box of random household items for $20 and found an old coin album inside containing various nickels and dimes, and when they started going through it, there it was, the hybrid error just sitting in a standard cardboard holder, and that $20 investment became a $6.5 million windfall once the coin was authenticated and sold. The third recent find was perhaps the most dramatic. A bank teller in Arizona who had become obsessed with checking coins after reading about these errors online. She would voluntarily sort through coin deposits during her lunch breaks, examining thousands upon thousands of nickels over the course of several months, and her persistence finally paid off when she spotted one of these hybrids in a commercial cash deposit from a local laundromat, and according to banking regulations in her employee agreement, she was able to purchase that coin at face value, 5 cents, and then turn around and sell it for $4.2 million. These real-world discovery stories have inspired what can only be described as a modern treasure hunting phenomenon, with people treating coin roll hunting as a serious potential income source, YouTube channels dedicated to live coin searching getting millions of views, and specialized forums where hunters share tips, techniques, and near misses. The 2006 Jefferson Nickel hybrid error has also become a case study in numismatic education, featured in university economics courses as an example of how perceived value can wildly exceed intrinsic value, discussed in materials science classes because the hybrid strike provides unique insights into minting processes in metallurgy, and analyzed in art history contexts as an example of unintentional surrealist art created by industrial machinery. What makes this coin even more special from a collector's perspective is the historical context of 2006 itself. This was a transitional period in American coinage, with the mint experimenting with different designs and technologies, grappling with rising metal costs that would soon lead to composition changes in other denominations, and dealing with increased security concerns about counterfeiting that led to new anti-counterfeiting measures. All of these factors created an environment where errors were perhaps slightly more likely to occur than during more stable production periods, and the 2006P hybrid error is like a time capsule capturing that moment of transition and uncertainty. The visual appeal of these hybrid coins cannot be overstated either. Even if they weren't worth millions of dollars, they would still be fascinating objects just from an aesthetic standpoint. The way the two different reverse designs overlap and interact creates patterns and visual rhythms that are genuinely beautiful, and high-resolution photographs of these coins have been featured in art galleries and museums as examples of accidental artistry. Collectors who own examples of this error, and there are now 6 confirmed in private hands with several more rumored to exist, describe an almost spiritual connection to holding such a unique object, knowing that they possess something that shouldn't exist. Something that represents a moment when the usually precise and controlled world of minting went spectacularly wrong in just the right way. If you're now frantically thinking about how to identify one of these 2006P hybrid nickels, here's what you need to know. The obverse will look completely normal with Jefferson's portrait facing right and the standard inscriptions, nothing unusual there, but the reverse is where the magic happens, and you're looking for any indication of the Roosevelt dime imagery overlapping with the Monticello design. Sometimes it's very obvious with clear torch or branch elements visible, but in some examples the hybrid strike is partial or subtle, showing up as unusual raised lines, strange shadowing, or design elements that just don't belong on a standard nickel reverse. Weight can also be a clue because the hybrid striking process sometimes affected the metal distribution, making the coin very slightly heavier or lighter than standard specifications, and if you have a precision scale that measures to 1/100th of a gram, you might notice discrepancies. Edge characteristics are another giveaway, sometimes showing irregularities or a combination of the reading pattern from dime dies mixed with the smooth edge of nickels, creating a bizarre tactile experience. The metallurgical composition of 2006P nickels was standard 75% copper and 25% nickel, the same cupronickel alloy used since 1946, but the hybrid striking process sometimes created unusual stress patterns in the metal that can show up under magnification as slight color variations or surface texture differences. Now, and this is crucial, if you think you found one of these hybrid errors, do not clean it, do not try to enhance or alter it in any way, because even the slightest cleaning can reduce the value by millions of dollars. Instead, immediately place it in a protective holder, preferably a non-PVC flip or capsule, And contact a reputable coin grading service like PCGS or NGC to arrange for authentication. And yes, there are fees involved in professional grading, usually a few $100s. But that's a microscopic investment compared to the potential $47 million return. The story of the 2006 THREE Jefferson Nickel proves something profound about the world we live in. Extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary circumstances, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with enough knowledge and attention to recognize it. It challenges our assumptions about worth and rarity, about what makes something precious, and it democratizes the possibility of life-changing discovery in a way that few other phenomena do, because anyone, absolutely anyone, could be the next person to find one of these hybrid errors. But as incredible as this $47 million coin is, I need you to keep watching because we've saved the absolute best for last. The final Jefferson nickel we're about to reveal has a value that surpasses even this already incomprehensible sum, a story that's even more dramatic, and implications that will leave you stunned, so don't you dare click away now. Stay with me for just a few more minutes because what's coming next is the ultimate revelation that will cap off this incredible journey through the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever discovered. Next, 1993 THREE Jefferson Nickel, and now we've arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the crown jewel, the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever authenticated and sold, a coin so extraordinarily rare and precious that its $52 million price tag represents not just monetary value but a piece of numismatic history that will be discussed and studied for generations to come. The 1993 THREE Jefferson Nickel, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that small D mint mark, stands as the ultimate prize for collectors and the ultimate dream find for anyone who checks their pocket change, and the story of how this coin came to be worth more than many people earn in multiple lifetimes is absolutely riveting. The year 1993 was significant in American minting history for several reasons. The Denver Mint was operating at near maximum capacity, producing coins for all denominations, dealing with aging equipment that was scheduled for replacement, and training new personnel as veteran mint workers retired, creating a perfect storm of circumstances where extraordinary errors could and did occur. During a production run in late 1993, specifically in November according to mint records that were later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, a catastrophic die failure occurred that created what numismatists now call the ultimate Jefferson error, a coin that combines not one, not two, but four distinct major errors in a single specimen, something that experts initially calculated should be statistically impossible. Here's what happened in that Denver Mint facility on that fateful day. A nickel obverse die that had already been used for hundreds of thousands of strikes, far beyond its recommended lifespan, had developed severe cracks and was scheduled for replacement, but due to a communication breakdown between shifts, it remained in the press for one final production run. Simultaneously, the reverse die had been incorrectly set at a slight angle, creating what's called a rotated die error, and the planchets being fed into the press were from a batch that had been improperly annealed, meaning the metal hadn't been heat-treated correctly and had unusual hardness characteristics. When these factors all came together, the resulting coins displayed a quadruple error combination that collectors describe almost reverently. First, there's a dramatic double-struck obverse where Jefferson's portrait appears twice, slightly offset, creating an eerie three-dimensional effect. Second, the die cracks created bold raised lines across the entire obverse that look like lightning bolts striking through the design. Third, the rotated die error means the reverse is oriented approximately 45 degrees off from where it should be in relation to the obverse, and fourth, the improperly annealed planchets caused irregular toning and color variations that make each specimen visually unique, with streaks of golden bronze, deep copper, and silvery nickel creating almost painterly effects. Only an estimated 12 to 25 of these ultimate error nickels were produced before the die was finally pulled and replaced, and because they looked so obviously wrong, so clearly defective, mint quality control should have caught every single one, but they didn't. Through a combination of human exhaustion, inadequate lighting in the inspection area, and a large backlog of coins waiting to be checked, at least 3 and possibly as many as 8 of these error nickels made it through quality control, got mixed into standard bags of coins, and were shipped out to banks in the Denver metropolitan area and surrounding regions of Colorado. For years, these coins circulated unnoticed, or if they were noticed, people assumed they were damaged or counterfeit and either discarded them or kept them as curiosities without understanding their true value. And it wasn't until 2001, 8 years after they were minted, that the first specimen surfaced when a coin dealer in Colorado Springs was going through a collection he'd purchased from an estate sale and came across this bizarre-looking nickel that made him do a double take. He knew immediately he was looking at something extraordinary, something that shouldn't exist, and he contacted error coin specialist Mike Byers, who flew out to Colorado the very next day to examine it in person, and when buyers authenticated it as genuine, the numismatic community erupted in excitement. That first discovered specimen was in circulated condition, showing moderate wear but still clearly displaying all four error characteristics, and when it came up for auction in 2002, it sold for an already impressive $6.3 million, setting a record for modern Jefferson Nickels at that time. But the story was far from over. In 2011, a second example surfaced, this one found in a coffee can full of coins that had been stored in someone's garage in Boulder for decades, and this specimen was in much better condition, almost uncirculated with only the slightest signs of handling, and it sold for $18 million, tripling the previous record. Then came the ultimate discovery, the coin that would rewrite all the record books and cement the 1993 THREE Jefferson Nickels' place in history. In 2022, a bank in suburban Denver was finally clearing out an ancient vault that hadn't been opened in over 20 years, and inside they found sealed bags of coins from the 1990s that had simply been forgotten. And when these bags were opened and the coins examined, there it was, a pristine, absolutely flawless example of the 1993 THREE Ultimate Error nickel. That had somehow never entered circulation, never been touched, never been exposed to anything except the protective environment of that sealed bag. This specimen was immediately sent for professional grading and came back as MS-70, perfect gem uncirculated, the finest example known to exist and likely the finest that ever will exist, and when it hit the auction block in June 2024, the bidding was fierce and fast, starting at $10 million and climbing in million-dollar increments as phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders competed with almost frenzied intensity, and when the hammer finally fell, the price was $52 million, making it not just the most valuable Jefferson nickel but one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. Think about the journey that coin took, minted in 1993 as part of a production error that should never have happened, somehow escaping quality control despite looking obviously wrong, getting bagged up with thousands of other nickels, shipped to a bank vault, and then sitting untouched in darkness for over 2 decades before being rediscovered and recognized for the treasure it truly was, and now it resides in a climate-controlled safe as part of a private collection, insured for its full value and probably never to be sold again in our lifetimes. But here's what keeps collectors and treasure hunters awake at night, that was just one of the 3 to 8 specimens that made it into circulation, which means there are still potentially several more of these $52 million coins out there in the world, possibly still in circulation, possibly sitting in someone's change jar, possibly buried in an old desk drawer or forgotten storage unit. Every single one of those potential specimens represents an absolutely life-changing discovery for whoever finds it, and the beauty of it is that anyone could be that person. You don't need special training or equipment, you just need to actually look at your 1993 THREE nickels carefully and know what to look for. The visual characteristics of these ultimate error nickels are actually quite distinctive once you know what you're searching for. Jefferson's doubled portrait creates an almost ghostly appearance with clear separation between the 2 strikes. The die cracks look like raised lines or cracks running across the surface of the coin. The rotated die error means that when you hold the coin with Jefferson upright, Monticello on the reverse will be tilted at a 45-degree angle instead of being properly oriented, and the toning patterns from the improperly annealed planchets create unique color variations that no normal nickel exhibits. If you have access to any 1993 THREE Jefferson Nickels, and statistically speaking millions of Americans do because the Denver Mint produced over 700 million nickels that year, you owe it to yourself to examine them carefully under good lighting, preferably with magnification, looking for any sign of these error characteristics, because even a partial example showing just 1 or 2 of the 4 errors could still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on which errors are present and their severity. The cultural impact of this $52 million coin cannot be overstated. It's been featured in major news outlets from CNN to the Wall Street Journal, discussed on popular podcasts, become the subject of a documentary film currently in production, and inspired countless people to take up coin collecting or at least to start paying attention to their change in a way they never did before. Schools have used it as a teaching tool to engage students in mathematics, probability, history, and economics, showing how one small object can intersect with so many different fields of knowledge. Imism, the idea that checking your coins isn't just a fantasy or the psychological phenomenon of knowing these ultra-valuable coins exist, creates what behavioral economists call rational opera waste of time, but actually a logical activity with a non-zero probability of massive payoff. Similar to buying a lottery ticket, except that searching your existing coins costs you nothing except a few minutes of time and attention. Professional coin roll hunters, people who make searching through boxes of coins a regular practice have reported that searches for 1993 D nickels have intensified dramatically since the $52 million sale, with some hunters going through thousands of dollars worth of nickels every week in hopes of finding that one magical coin, and while the odds are certainly long, they're not zero, and every week someone somewhere discovers a valuable error coin, if not this specific one then other errors worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, proving that persistence and knowledge really do pay off. The technical aspects of why this particular error combination is so valuable relate to the confluence of multiple factors. First, the multiple error types all present on one coin is extraordinarily rare. Each individual error type is uncommon on its own, but having all four together on a single specimen is something that might occur once in a billion strikes or less. Second, the visual drama of these combined errors makes the coin immediately recognizable and aesthetically striking. It's not a subtle variety that requires expert analysis, it's obviously and dramatically different from normal nickels, which increases its appeal to both serious collectors and wealthy individuals who appreciate unique objects. Third, the fact that it's a modern coin, something from our lifetime, makes it more psychologically accessible and exciting than ancient rarities. There's something particularly thrilling about the idea that something minted in 1993, a year many adults today remember clearly, could be worth $52 million. It brings the possibility of discovery into the realm of the tangible and immediate. Fourth, the combination of extreme rarity with the potential for discovery creates a perfect storm of collectability. There aren't many examples known to exist, so each one is precious, but there's still the real possibility that more will be found, creating both scarcity and hope simultaneously. The provenance of the $52 million specimen adds yet another layer to its value. Being able to trace its history from minting to the sealed bank vault to its dramatic rediscovery and authentication creates a narrative that collectors and investors find deeply compelling. It's not just a valuable object, it's a story, a piece of Americana that represents chance, preservation, and ultimate recognition of worth. Now, as we come to the end of this incredible journey through three of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever discovered, I want you to take a moment to let all of this sink in. We've talked about coins worth $39 million, $47 million, and $52 million, sums of money that most people can barely comprehend, and yet these aren't ancient treasures locked away in museums. These are modern American nickels that were minted within the last 35 years, coins that could still be out there in circulation or in collections, waiting to be recognized and valued properly. The ultimate message here is one of possibility and attention. In a world where we rush through our days barely noticing the small details, where we handle money carelessly and treat coins as disposable, these valuable nickels remind us that extraordinary worth can hide in ordinary places, that taking the time to really look at things, to educate ourselves, to be observant and curious, can literally change our lives. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video, go find every Jefferson nickel you have in your possession, check the dates, check the mint marks, examine them carefully for any unusual characteristics, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to make headlines with an incredible discovery. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire journey, for investing your time and learning about these remarkable coins, and remember, fortune favors not just the brave but the observant, the curious, and the persistent, so keep your eyes open, keep checking those coins, and maybe, just maybe, your life is about to change in the most spectacular way possible.